The fire crackled low, spitting the occasional ember into the night air. Sparks drifted upward and vanished against the canopy of black where stars were hidden behind the tall pines. The smell of burning pine resin lingered heavy in the air, sharp and sweet all at once, mixing with the faint dampness of moss and earth beneath our boots. I leaned forward, rubbing my hands near the flames, watching how the glow painted everyone's faces in shifting light and shadow. You could see the tiredness on Jordan's face, the way his eyelids sagged from the long hike earlier that day. Taylor clutched the thermos of cocoa tight, blowing steam into the cool air before taking a sip. Alex looked restless. His knee bounced, his eyes darted toward the fire, then out toward the tree line where the darkness seemed thicker than it should have been. Finally, Alex spoke, his voice low, almost swallowed by the forest itself. "You ever hear of food going missing out here?" he asked. We chuckled a little too quickly, trying to brush it off, but Alex shook his head. "No," he said, "I'm serious. That trip we took last fall, the one deep out past the ridge, something strange happened out there, and I haven't been able to forget it since." The fire popped sharply, and for a moment no one spoke. I remember leaning back against the log behind me, my palms pressed against the rough bark, the cold seeping into my fingers. Alex's eyes flicked across our faces, then down into the flames, and when he spoke again, his tone dropped even lower. It started with the food, one piece at a time. At first, we didn't think much of it. A missing granola bar here, a couple slices of bread gone the next morning. We chalked it up to clumsy packing or someone forgetting they'd had a late-night snack. I'll admit, I even accused Jordan of sleep-eating once, and he didn't take kindly to that. He'd narrowed his eyes, his jaw tight, swearing up and down that he wasn't the one, but by the third day, it was impossible to ignore. Our cooler box, the one with the heavy latch that always gave a satisfying click when you shut it, kept turning up suspiciously light. And it wasn't as though it had been torn into. The lid was always closed neatly. No claw marks, no broken latch, just missing food. I can still remember the way the mornings felt on that trip, gray mist hanging in the air, the cold dew soaking through socks if you strayed too far from the fire. Each time we opened that cooler, the dread set in deeper. That sharp, sweet scent of missing fruit, the absence of the tang of cheese we'd packed, the unsettling realization that our rations were dwindling faster than they should. By then, laughter had vanished from camp. Every face was tight, eyes darting toward one another. Taylor especially looked spooked, her lips pressed thin, her gaze flicking from us to the woods as though something unseen lingered just out of sight. We tried to fix it. We tied rope around the cooler, knotted it so tight that pulling it loose made our fingers burn. We stacked tin cups and pans on top of the lid so that any movement would send them clattering. The first night, we sat awake in shifts, watching, listening, straining our ears against the quiet of the forest, but the forest gave us nothing. Just the hollow silence of branches swaying, the occasional snap of a twig far off, and the thin whistle of wind through the leaves. And then came the morning when the rope was still tied, the pans still stacked, the cups unmoved, and yet food was gone. That was when I saw Jordan's face pale in the early light, his lips parted but no words coming out. His fingers shook as he lifted the lid, staring down into the cooler. For a long moment, the only sound was our breathing, fast and sharp, mixing with the faint hum of flies already circling the air. "It's not possible," Taylor whispered, but it had happened, and that wasn't the last time. By the fourth night, tension had grown so thick you could taste it, bitter, metallic, like biting your tongue. No one wanted to admit they were scared, but the way we snapped at each other told the truth. Every creak of a branch made our heads whip around. Every shadow seemed to crawl closer. That's when Alex suggested the camera. He always carried one. Of those small motion-activated trail cameras in his pack, usually for fun, to catch deer or raccoons on film. This time, though, it felt like our only hope. We strapped it to a nearby pine, angled toward the cooler. I remember watching Alex's hands as he set it up, knuckles pale from gripping too tightly, sweat glistening at his temples despite the cold. He pressed the button with a snap, stepped back, and gave us a look that said, "Now we wait." The night dragged on. I lay awake in my sleeping bag, staring at the roof of the tent, listening to every sound, the low whistle of wind, the soft rustle of leaves, the faint drip of condensation off branches. My heart pounded so loudly, I was sure it would wake the others. I closed my eyes tight, but the thought wouldn't leave me. Something was out there. Something clever enough to open a cooler, clever enough to avoid every trap we'd set. Dawn came gray and heavy, mist coiling low over the forest floor. When Alex retrieved the camera, we huddled around like children waiting for a magician's trick. His thumb hovered over the playback button, his lips pressed into a thin line. The first clips were nothing. Dark shapes of trees swaying, the occasional moth flashing wide against the lens. Then, in one grainy frame, something slipped into view, a fox. Its fur looked almost silver in the infrared glow, its eyes catching light like two pale coins. It moved with startling precision, paws silent on the leaves. It padded up to the cooler, nose twitching. For a long moment, it only sniffed. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, it pressed its snout against the latch, and the latch clicked open, the cooler lifted as though guided by invisible hands. The fox's muzzle dipped inside, rummaging, emerging with a piece of bread clamped between its teeth. Then, with shocking care, it nosed the lid back into place until it settled neatly shut again. I swear, as the footage ended, you could feel the air leave our lungs all at once. My skin prickled cold despite the fire. Taylor's face was pale, her lips trembling slightly. Jordan rubbed his eyes hard as if trying to scrub away what he'd just seen. Alex only stared at the screen, his jaw slack before finally whispering, That's not normal." The forest was damp that morning, thick with mist that clung to our clothes and dampened our hair. We carried the smell of wet leaves and iron-rich soil, a scent that filled your lungs like cold water. None of us spoke at first. We just stood there, the echo of that grainy footage heavy in the air, as though the fox might step out of the trees at any second, bread still dangling from its jaws. Jordan was the first to break the silence. His voice was hoarse, brittle. "So, what do? Just let it keep robbing us?" Taylor shot him a look, her brows knitting together. "That wasn't robbing. Did you see it? It opened the latch like it knew." I remember Alex's expression most clearly. Tight lips, clenched jaw, eyes scanning the tree line with a kind of restless hunger. "We follow it," he said flatly. "We need to know where it's taking the food." The fire had burned low, leaving behind the bitter, acrid smell of wet ash. We packed quickly, stuffing gear into bags without speaking much more. Each zip of a tent flap, each click of a buckle seemed too loud, like the forest itself was listening. When we finally set off, the trail was faint. Tiny paw prints pressed into the soft earth, almost lost beneath a layer of pine needles. I had to crouch low to see them, my knees damp from the dew. The tracks weren't hurried. They followed a strange, steady pattern, weaving deeper off the beaten path, into a part of the woods we hadn't explored. The deeper we went, the quieter it became. No bird song, no rustle of squirrels, not even the buzz of flies, just our footsteps, the crunch of dead branches, and the occasional snap that made every head whip around. I caught the smell first, faint metallic, sharp in the back of my throat. Not just soil, something else, something wrong. "Do you smell that?" I whispered. Taylor nodded, her nose wrinkling. "Like rust." Alex crouched again, brushing damp leaves aside. The fox's trail was still there, leading downhill toward a thicket. He motioned us forward, his hand trembling slightly though. He tried to hide it. The descent was rough. Mud sucked at our boots, slick roots threatened to trip us. My palms stung from grabbing branches to steady myself. Sweat rolled down my back despite the chill of the air. Every few steps, I'd glance at the others. The set of Jordan's jaw, the way Taylor's teeth worried her bottom lip, Alex's, eyes wide and unblinking, and then we saw it. At first, it looked like just another jumble of trees. Then the shape came into focus. Metal, twisted and dark, half swallowed by vines. An overturned car, its windows shattered, its frame sunken into the earth like it had been lying there for years. We froze, every one of us. The air was heavier here, thick with that metallic tang of rust and something fouler beneath it. Oil, maybe, or the sharp, coppery sting of dried blood. My stomach tightened, bile rising in my throat, and there, sitting calmly beside the wreck, was the fox. Its fur caught what little light filtered through the trees, silver-tipped, almost glowing against the shadows. Its eyes met ours, unblinking, unnervingly steady. Between its paws lay the crust of bread from our cooler, half-eaten. For a moment, no one moved. It was as if time itself had frozen, the forest holding its breath, the fox watching us with a gaze too deliberate to be animal. Then Jordan whispered, his voice cracking, "Oh my God! There's someone in there." We rushed forward. Inside, the crushed metal of the car, barely visible through the shattered glass and tangled branches, was a man. His face was pale, drawn tight with exhaustion, his lips cracked and bleeding. One arm was pinned awkwardly beneath the collapsed dashboard. His chest rose and fell shallowly, each breath a struggle that rattled through the silence. Taylor clapped a hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Alex swore under his breath, fumbling for his water bottle. I felt my heart hammering so violently I thought it might tear free from my chest. And all the while, the fox remained where it was, silent, watchful, its head tilted as though it understood everything unfolding. I don't think I'll ever forget the way the man's eyes fluttered open, just enough to meet ours. His lips moved, dry and cracked, and the words rasped out barely above a whisper. It fed me. The forest seemed to tilt on its axis, the weight of his words pressing down on all of us at once. The fox lowered its head as if in quiet confirmation, and in that moment, the impossible became undeniable. For a moment, none of us moved. The weight of what the man had whispered, those three brittle words, hung in the damp air like smoke too heavy to blow away. It fed me. I crouched closer, careful not to slip on the slick mud, and peered through the jagged frame of the car. His face was pale, streaked with grime and dried blood, lips cracked and peeling. A sour iron tang hung around him, the unmistakable smell of old blood mingled with rust and metal. His eyes, though half-lidded and watery, followed me with startling clarity. Taylor knelt beside me, her hands trembling so badly that the water bottle she held rattled against its cap. "Here," she whispered, unscrewing the lid. "Drink, please drink." We tilted the bottle toward his lips, and he took the smallest sip, coughing weakly as the water trickled down his chin. His breath rattled, shallow and uneven, but there was life in it, faint, stubborn life. Behind us, the fox sat as still as a carving, its fur bristling faintly in the shifting light. Not once did it bolt or flinch, not even as we crowded around the wreck. Its eyes flicked from the man to us, calm, watchful, almost protective. I remember the way Jordan's jaw tensed, his voice sharp with disbelief. Are we really saying a fox has been keeping him alive? The man's lips curved into the faintest smile, cracked and painful. His voice rasped out like sandpaper, each word broken by shallow breaths. "I know that fox." We exchanged glances, unsettled. Alex leaned closer. "You know it." The man closed his eyes, gathering what little strength he had. His hands twitched faintly, one pinned beneath the twisted dashboard, the other feebly grasping the air as though reaching for a memory. "Last year, winter," he wheezed. "I was driving, came across it, snare, leg torn, blood everywhere. Hunter must have said it. He coughed hard, chest rattling. I cut it loose, took it to shelter, thought I'd never see it again. His eyes open then, glassy but burning with something more than favor. It remembers. Been bringing me food, bread, fruit, even water, I think, drops from leaves. His cracked lips twitched again, half a smile, half a grimace. It kept me alive. The forest seemed to press in tighter with each word. My heart thudded in my ears, my skin prickling cold despite the humid air. The idea was insane, impossible, and yet here he was, alive when he should not have been, sustained long enough for us to find him, and the fox. It sat no more than 10 feet away, its silvered fur damp with morning mist, its gaze locked onto the man with an intensity that made the hair on my arms rise. Not animal curiosity, not hunger, something else. Something that felt eerily like loyalty. The man was fading. Fast his breaths growing shallower, panic surged through us. Help me, Alex barked, shoving at the crumpled metal. We've got to get him out. We scrambled to obey. My hands slipped on rust, leaving streaks of reddish-brown across my palms. Jordan braced his shoulder against the doorframe, grunting with effort. Taylor tugged branches away, the twigs snapping in her fists. The metal shrieked as we forced it aside. The sound sliced through the forest, startling a flock of unseen birds into flight. The man groaned, his face twisting in pain, but his eyes stayed on the fox, never wavering. With a final heave, the dashboard shifted enough to free his arm. I slid my hands beneath his shoulders, feeling the frail bones jutting through his shirt, and together we dragged him out onto the damp earth. He gasped at the sudden release, sucking in air like a drowning man breaking the surface. Taylor knelt, immediately pressing her jacket under his head, her eyes wet with tears. She tried to blink away. Alex tore open his pack, searching for anything, a first aid kit, cloth, anything to stabilize him, and still the fox stayed. It padded closer now, silent on the wet leaves. My breath caught in my throat. Every instinct screamed to back away, but I didn't move. None of us did. The fox stopped just short of the man's outstretched hand, tilted its head, and sat down again. Its amber eyes flicked between us, then back to him, as if waiting for permission. The man smiled faintly, his fingers twitching toward the animal. "Thank you," he whispered. "And I swear to you, by the fire we sit around tonight, that the..." Fox dipped its head, the smallest, slowest bow before slipping back into the underbrush, silent as smoke, gone. The hike back was brutal. We fashioned a makeshift stretcher out of branches and a tarp, our muscles screaming as we carried him mile after mile through the thick woods. The smell of sweat and damp earth clung to us, the straps biting into our shoulders, every step a battle against exhaustion. The man drifted in and out of consciousness, murmuring half-formed words, his face a mask of pain and gratitude. When we finally stumbled onto the trail where our cars were parked, relief nearly knocked me to my knees. We called for help, signal, barely flickering on the edge of service, and when the paramedics arrived, the look on their faces told me everything. He shouldn't have been alive. Not after days trapped in that wreck, but he was, because of a fox. Later that night, back at camp, the fire crackled the same as it does now. Sparks floated into the dark, the scent of pine smoke clinging to our clothes. We sat in silence for a long time, each of us lost in thought, replaying the impossible chain of events. I kept seeing the fox's eyes, intelligent, steady, grateful. Alex finally broke the silence, his voice soft, shaking. Do you think it'll ever come back?" Taylor hugged her knees, staring into the flames. "Maybe it doesn't need to. It already did what it came for." No one argued. We just sat there, the weight of it settling over us. The kind of story you don't tell lightly. The kind that changes the way you look at the woods, the way you look at life itself. And as I tell it to you now, here by this fire, I can still feel it. That sense that the darkness beyond these trees isn't just emptiness. that sometimes the wild remembers that kindness once given can return in the most unexpected ways.